So really, who gained the upper hand after the midterms? Was there a blue wave that was dispositive? The Democrats, it's their day. They certainly picked up the most seats in the House for them since the election after Watergate. But the president's party typically does lose seats in midterm elections. Now, you could argue that Trump has a kind of economic success right now, or at least a narrative of one, that he could have been one of the few to get more seats. So what really happened here? That is where we're going to start our great debate. Angela Rye and Scott Jennings. Good to have you both. Angela Rye, thank you. The blue wave, do you believe that with what we see in the elections, that what happened here was that people came out and voted against the president or for Democrats? What do you think happened?
I think it was both. I think that people voted for candidates who would be historic first. And I also think that people voted against an agenda that is filled with hate, bigotry, xenophobia, as we've seen him run since the 2016 election. And I think people are tired of that and wanted some checks and balances for Donald Trump. I was actually really surprised that Democrats gained the House back. I thought that we were more likely to gain the Senate. So I was very surprised by that outcome. There were several other instances where, yep, that's frown up faces. That's what I thought. I thought because of how these districts have been gerrymandered, that it was going to be extremely tough for Democrats to
I hear you on that.
I
hear you on that. I actually set the over-under at 33 seats. And I took the under on it with all these people that I like to make friendly bets with about what's going to happen to make the races a little bit more interesting.
I hope you gain some money from that.
No, I'm actually getting killed the way it looks right now with these 7 races outstanding. But on the Senate side, I always thought it was a tough path, Scott. I thought that it made more sense, given how many vulnerable Democrats you had in states. Manchin, I thought for sure was a seat that he, you know, as popular as he is there, I thought he was going to have trouble. I thought you guys underperformed. But your party says otherwise. They say this was a great success. Put up the tweet from the GOP about how they explain what they see as huge success. The reason for it, undeniable. President Trump proved to be our closer, our game changer, making a quantifiable difference in key races across the country. Make the case.
Well, first of all, I think that Joe Manchin, since you mentioned him, saved himself by voting for Brett Kavanaugh. I think if he had gone against Kavanaugh, he would have suffered the same fate as the other red state Democrats who went against Kavanaugh. So I think that explains West Virginia. I wasn't really surprised Democrats took back the House. When you consider the number of districts that Republicans represented that Hillary Clinton had carried in 2016, combine that with the number of Republican retirements, and combine that with history, and combine that with all the money the Democrats had, they should have picked up the House, and they did it. I thought they would do 35 to 40. That's about what we're headed for. The national surveys were about right. I think what's noteworthy about this election is that Barack Obama got cleaned out in 2010, and he came back to win re-election in 2012. Bill Clinton got cleaned out in 94. He came back to win re-election. So I don't think you can read too much into this as far as the presidential campaign. But if you're Donald Trump, you have to start talking to the people in the suburbs. He made a tactical mistake by going to the caravan instead of the economy. I know he thinks it's boring. He's got to embrace the boring if he wants to win in 2020.
At least he could have stuck with the truth. The caravan was a complete ruse. It was a joke. It was about fear and loathing. We all said it, anybody who knew what they were talking about, and the president proved us right by never mentioning it again after the election. What a shameful thing that was, and I think it hurt your party. But to Scott's point, Angela, if you look at what happened there, Obama, Clinton, they took beatings in their first midterm. However, they didn't have the economy that Trump had. So in your analysis, your position on this, do you think that Trump should have done worse than he did, or given his economy, if he weren't saying so much ugliness to America, he would have done even better?
Well, we know that Donald Trump is his own worst enemy, right? Whether we're talking about the number of lies that he tells in a day on Twitter or at press conferences, or we're talking about the ways in which he disparages human beings, whether they're White House correspondents or just an everyday person. We know that he struggles to stay on message. So it's no surprise that Donald Trump couldn't tout wins. Wins arguably that Republicans were touting all over the country. I think the other real challenge is there are now candidates who are running for office office who are trying to be baby Trump. We saw one run against Andrew Gillum. We're seeing one now who's running against, in a runoff, Mike Espy in Mississippi. Cindy Hyde-Smith, who talked about wanting to be in a front row at a public hanging ceremony. So you see some of this rhetoric. People think it is successful, and they're also not talking about Donald Trump's record of supposed success, if that's what you want to call it, if you think leaving out the little guy is success. So I think that, you know, there is a message discipline issue. There's also a real challenge to sell people on a dream that's not real. You are struggling in this economy. You are struggling to make ends meet. It's not a real success story for anyone except for the rich.
Hey, Scott, what is the reality for your party in terms of reining in the president's rhetoric? Does anybody have the gumption to do it, even though you know you lost a lot of seats because of it in this election? People may like the tax cut. Conservatives in the suburbs like it. They like the cuts and regulations. They hate how he speaks. They hate what he means for their party and their presumed values. Do you have any shot of making him clean up his talk?
Well, I think the best chance we have of doing that is Donald Trump realizing that getting it right doesn't just matter for his party in the next election, it matters for him personally. I mean, this is a guy who has a great economic record and he wants to get reelected, and there's a path for him to get reelected. It's going to be hard to do, though, if he doesn't make people connect what they perceive to be a good economy and a good personal financial situation directly to his policies. It's hard for people to make that connection when you're focused on other things.
How do you think it meets the ears
when you're
of the
directly on the ballot?
The suburban women, people like you, white-collar guys, educated guys, savvy guys, to hear him saying about one of your heroes, all right, Bob Mueller, isn't just a decorated veteran. He served with honor in this government. When his name was offered up in the selection process after Rosenstein picked him, Republicans of all stripes in elected office said, now that's a quality guy. That's a quality guy. And for the president to run him down into the gutter the way he did today, and it ain't the first time, you think you can get him to stop doing that? Or is he always going to put the me before the we?
Well, I think as it relates to the Russia investigation, I think the president's position on this is not going to change. He's believed it was a hoax from the beginning. He doesn't like the people involved. He's made that perfectly clear. He's obviously angry about it. And I suspect he's going to continue to be angry about it until something that comes out that says this is now over and it's no longer hanging over your head. I mean, he spent the first 2 years with a really dark cloud hanging over his head, and he wants it to end. So I think if you're the president, what you have to hope for is this ends. You are not implicated in any wrongdoing. The economy keeps rolling. You get the trade situation worked out with China and other countries. That puts off and staves off a recession. And you get to run for re-election without a dark cloud and with an economy that is working for a lot of people in the suburbs and a lot of people in the upper Midwest. Why does that matter? Because the suburbs and the upper Midwest went blue in the midterms.
Long way to go. We're out of time here today. We'll talk about it much more. But it is interesting, Angela. 2 of the 3 things Scott just mentioned are only in bad shape right now because of this president. So we'll see where it goes. Thanks to both of you. Have a great night. Thank you for sharing some of the time with me. Florida just ordered